for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet in person, I'm Judy Clem. I'm the executive director of the Friends of the Oak Park Conservatory. And the Friends support the Oak Park Conservatory with volunteers and lots of volunteer opportunities. We host many special events and we do education programming like we have tonight. And we also provide fundraising support to the 100-year-old conservatory. So it's a real pleasure to partner with the Park District on our nonprofit work. And as part of our mission, we want to help educate and inspire gardeners to become more confident in your endeavors. So, to that end, we do lectures like this. This is the first of 2026 for us. And we're excited to have Jamie here. Our next program is something we haven't touched on, but I think super timely. In February on the 19th, we are hosting a topic of drought tolerant gardening. So if that isn't a hot topic, I don't know what is, but now is the time, right? We have to be prepared for changes in our climate and what that will do to our choices in our gardens. So tune in, sign up for that on February 19th. That will be Zoom virtual. And then we are also excited to bring back in April, we have 3 weeks in a row of our Learn and Grow series. Those will be in person. Space will be limited because we'll be in person at the conservatory, so we'll have room for about 50 participants for the Learn and Grow lectures. So I'm not sure if registration is open for those just yet, but watch for it and we'll send an email out as well. We have a fantastic lineup of our topics. I think we're doing a Tomatoes 101 with one of our Illinois Extension friends and preparing your garden. And then we've got Chris Smith coming back and doing the container gardening, which was fantastic last year. So those are what we have coming up from an education perspective. This Sunday, as I was talking with Janice, who's on our seed swap committee, is our fourth annual seed swap event. And the general public is admitted from noon till 2 p.m. But if you are a member of the Friends of the Oak Park Conservatory, you get an hour early admission. So from 11 to 12, it's for Friends members. And then from noon until 2 p.m., it is open to the public. So we have a very wide range of incredible seeds, including native perennials, annuals, fruits, veggies, herbs, grasses, all of the things, and a beautiful selection of seeds for you. They are free, but we ask that if you have a packet of seeds that you can bring to the swap to contribute, we would appreciate it. And we will have our volunteers on hand to help advise, and answer any questions about the seeds that you're thinking of growing. So what are we going to do with these seeds in January? Well, that's what Jamie is here to tell us about tonight. So it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest, University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator Jamie Viback. Loves to share her knowledge and experience as a backyard gardener with others interested in making their surroundings a beautiful part of the local ecosystem. Jamie received her master's degree in environmental biology from Governor State University. She shared her love of gardening and native plants through local land trusts with the residents of Will County and beyond. And now with the extension, Jamie appreciates the opportunity to really geek out on all things plants and how we all fit together in the ecosystem. Tonight, as my co-host, I also want to welcome Casey Nikoloff. She is a Friends volunteer and our wonderful Q&A manager of the chat tonight. So if you do have questions, pop them into the chat and we will take questions at the end. And if we happen to go over a few minutes, Jamie's flexible with us. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Jamie. You want to share?
Wonderful. Let me get my slides up here. There we go. You're seeing my slides now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I am here today to talk about winter sowing. First off, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with extension, we do quite a bit. I am part of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Department, but we do a lot through 4-H with youth leadership, through our SNAP Ed program, at least as long as it's going to be around for, with food safety. We have parenting and community and economic development. We have just all kinds of really great stuff that we do, all university-backed, research-based information through the University of Illinois. So that's just kind of in a nutshell who we are. And so tonight I am here to talk about winter sowing. And winter sowing, the definition of it is basically a method of sowing seeds in containers during the winter, letting them germinate naturally outside, and then transplanting the seedlings once the ground thaws in the spring. No lights, no special equipment needed, just letting Mother Nature do her own thing. So, how does it work? You plant your seeds in the winter, Mother Nature does her thing over the winter into the spring, and we end up with some seedlings. Now, timing can be a little bit tricky here. It's going to depend on the plant. And what we want to take into account is, where did this plant come from? It's not something we normally think about with our vegetable plants because we have, altered them 6 ways to Sunday to make them into something bigger and tastier and whatever. But all these plants came from somewhere. And so depending on where that somewhere is going to depend on when you want to start them. So the more temperate the plant's native environment, the earlier you're going to want to start them. So for example, milkweed, liatris, coneflowers, all native to our area here, all used to our winters, the cold, the freezing, the thawing, the freezing, the thawing, all the snow we've been getting, these absolute polar temperatures that are coming up. Yeah, they're used to that. But more originally tropical plants like peppers, pumpkins, tomatoes need to be started a little bit later. That said, we're going to start them in sort of a mini greenhouse. And the seeds will still experience the freezes and thaws of winter, just while being a little bit more protected than if you just threw them on the ground. And then in spring, you got your plants. So why do we do this? Why can't we just plant things in the spring and expect them to grow? Something is needed to break the seed coat, right? These seeds, the stuff that's going to be the plant is encased in this hard shell, and something is needed to break that shell. Now, some seeds have a much thinner shell that doesn't require this. Soaking them a little bit is enough to get them going. Something like basil, you can actually, if you put basil seeds in your hand and drop some water on it, you can actually watch the seed coat just fall right off it. It's really interesting to see if you've never tried that. But other things, especially things that are native to here, they have a tougher seed coat because they got to make it through the winter. And if a little bit of water was enough to make that seed coat fall off and all those tender little bits of roots and shoots start to come out, as soon as it froze again, they'd be toast. So they've got to be a little bit tougher. They've got to make you work for it. So they have this tough seed coat on there that needs this freeze thaw cycle to break it. There are other methods to get through that seed coat too. There's another method called scarification. We emulate that oftentimes with some sandpaper and blocks of wood. So something like wild indigo, if you wanted to try and start some wild indigo, you got to do even more than just stratification. You got to do that scarification process to even get through that seed coat because it's so tough. But for the most part, most of what we're going to start is going to work with this stratification. You can also emulate this in the refrigerator, freezer. It's a little more finicky. You don't get quite as good a germination because it's not as realistic a process. Having that constant temperature that you have in your refrigerator isn't as good. It'll work, but not as good as being outside in these constantly fluctuating temperatures, because that's what they're looking for. Why are we winter sowing? Well, first off, it is so much cheaper to start your own seeds. You can buy a packet of, 100, 200 seeds for about the same as it costs you to get one plug. So you can get one already started plug of a, say, coneflower, or you can get a packet of seeds and have more coneflowers than you know what to do with, probably even less. So it saves you a ton of money. Your plants get started faster because again, they're ready to go when the spring hits because they're following those natural rhythms. You can get a better selection of rarer plants. I was talking before the webinar. I actually managed to get a hold of some Kankakee mallow seeds. Kankakee mallow is an endangered plant that is only found on one island in the Kankakee River. Volunteers have collected seeds from that and started to, work on propagating this. I managed to get I had a pinch of seeds and I managed to get two seedlings to grow. I was not going to find Kankakee mallow in any plant sale anywhere. They're just not there. So I was able to get this very rare, very cool plant, and fingers crossed it comes back this year. It's also less work. Anybody who's ever tried to start seeds indoors knows how much work that is, how much space it takes, how much equipment it takes. And you got to get the fan going on them so you don't get the damping off, which is a fungal infection that the seedlings get that kills them. You don't have to worry about hardening them off, which is carrying the trays outside and then back inside at night and then back outside during the day and then back in. It's a lot of work, right? We don't want to do that. I am a lazy gardener. I love gardening, but I got a job, I've got a kid, I've got a dog. I got stuff to do, and I can't spend my whole life in my garden, unfortunately, as much as I would like to. Way less stress than having to deal with emails, but here we are. So I'm a lazy gardener. I need something that's not going to take all of my time, and this is the perfect way to do it. So again, you can start them indoors, you can direct seed them outside, but there's some cons to that. As we mentioned, indoor seed starting takes a lot of time, takes up space, requires specialty equipment, encourages insects, disease. You get these little spindly plants that you got to, again, like I said, move inside, move outside, move inside. Got to get the fan position just right forget that. I'm not doing all of that. And then direct seeding outside, I've had people say, well, why can't I just put the seeds right down onto the ground? You absolutely can. As a matter of fact, this is probably a great time to plant native seeds. If you're just going to throw them on the ground, do it in the snow or right before it's going to snow. Perfect. But you have less control over where those plants are going to be because when it rains or when the snow melts, it's going to move those seeds around. We got critters like birds, squirrels, chipmunks. They're all looking for stuff to eat right now, and your seeds look pretty tasty when there's not much else going on out there. So again, all of these very valid ways of starting seeds, but they got some pros and cons to them. So, do what works for you. This is just another method to try. Now, when do we do this? So this is where your seed packet's going to come in handy. Especially, so one of the native seed companies, Prairie Moon Nursery, their seed packets, tons of information on them. Their website has the same information. It will actually tell you how many days these seeds need to germinate. I have seen as few as 30 days, and I have seen as many as 120 days needed to cold stratify these seeds. So some of those seeds, they need to go in like early December if you want to have anything to plant by spring. Some of them, you can wait till January or February. Usually it's somewhere around 30 to 60 days. But again, checking that seed packet will help you know when the best time to start them is. So that's natives. Perennials, there are some perennials you can start January, February. Hardy annuals, hardy just means they can withstand a light frost. So hardy vegetables, I've got a list coming up, but things like your cole crops, right? Your broccoli, your kale, cabbages, all of those Brassica oleracea, the 27 plants that are all Brassica oleracea. That's a whole nother webinar all on its own. But those are hardy vegetables, right? We can grow those when it's cold out. Those are, you can put those in the fall and still have them. I had kale growing, I think, even through November sometimes, until you get that really hard frost that kills them off. But that's a good indication that those are things that you can winter sow earlier because they can handle that cold. Other things that are more tender, think basil, right? That frost, that's going to get into those cells, those very thin leaves and stuff. That's going to kill them right off. So those are your tender herbs. Those you want to wait until a little bit later to do because any risk of a heavy frost on those, they're going to be done. So again, check your seed packet. It will let you know what to do when. So again, here's some more examples. You can see natives for January and February, Liatris baptisia, coneflowers, milkweed, right? All of those, your real common ones. Perennials like poppies and lupins. A little note, if you're going to do lupins, double check which ones you have because there turns out two different kinds that get labeled wild lupin. And there is one that is native here and that is very important to the is it Carner blue? No, it's one of the butterflies, one of the rarer butterflies that really depends on those lupins as a host plant. But then there's another one that's actually native out west that's borderline invasive here. So double check if you're gonna do lupins, double check which ones you have. Prairie Moon's website has a whole article on that that talks about the two different kinds. So something I came across recently, just thought I would share. Anyway, hardy annuals, again, snapdragons, pansies, dianthus, all of these can be planted as well as your, vegetables, hardy herbs, oregano, sage, thyme, cilantro, all of those are hardy. In March, again, now we're getting to the things that are a little bit more temperate. So things like your zinnias, your marigolds, nasturtium, sunflowers, lettuce, beets, bok choy, lettuce is a great one because it will still it grows early in the spring, and especially if you can get like a little cold frame over it. But that's why winter sowing it in March, that's your cold frame, right? If you're going to do them winter sown, that's your little mini greenhouse. So you don't need the big cold frame in the garden. You can get them started that way. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about this wintersown.org website towards the end of the presentation, but there's a lady named Trudy Davidoff who has done all kinds of stuff on winter sowing and she's studied a lot. And some people seem to think that her word is law. And, if she says it, this is the only way to do it. Anything else is not winter sowing. No, you can winter sow lots of different ways. Now, the way she has come up with is the way she has found to be best or to have the highest yield, but it doesn't mean it's the only possible way to do this. There's flexibility everywhere. As we all know with gardening, you got to roll with the punches. We can be flexible. Plants can be picky, but sometimes they're a little more tolerant of things and we give them credit for. All right, then getting into April, this is the stuff that's going to be the really temperate stuff, the stuff that really can't handle cold, and that's going to be your tomatoes, beans, eggplants, pumpkins, cucumbers. Peppers get iffy in April. I am 100% guilty of always planting my peppers too early. Unless I'm busy and don't get around to planting my garden till later, then I get the peppers in at the perfect time and everything else too late. So, tomatoes can go in the ground, right around Mother's Day, along with a lot of other things. But peppers really like to wait until it's a little bit warmer. So you may have mixed results, we'll just say, with winter sowing peppers. But all right, so let's talk about the supplies. What do we need to do our winter sowing? So some recycled containers. I'm a huge fan of this because you don't need to go out and buy a lot of specialty equipment. Having the right kind of container is going to give you the best results. The wrong container could end in disaster. Disaster could just mean you don't get as much of a yield. But you also need to make sure you have the correct soil type. Again, wrong type of soil is going to kill off your seeds. And then having the right seeds. So there are seeds that are better than others for winter sowing, looking at you tropical plants. Um, but no, having the right kind of seeds, the right kind of soil, the right kind of containers, that's going to give you your best chance at success for this. Other stuff you're going to be looking for, something to label your containers with, depending on how you do it, twist ties or twine or clear tape, scissors, and something to poke holes with. So starting with containers, you want your container to meet these 4 criteria: repurposed plastic containers, and you want them to be translucent or clear. Milk jugs are fantastic. If you maybe don't have kids or don't go through that much milk, I have found that putting out a call on you know Facebook neighborhood groups or something asking for that. I put one message in a neighborhood group and a lady gave me 3 bags full of water jugs. So that's what you're going to see. The pictures on here that are mine are these fantastic translucent water jugs that worked perfectly. Daycares, maybe, will go through a lot of milk and might be willing to save you some of their milk jugs. Um, but, so you want them to be translucent or clear. You want to be able to see your hand through them, right? If you can't put your hand behind it and see it, it's probably not going to work. It's going to block too much sunlight. You want it to be deep enough to hold about 4 inches of soil and tall enough to have 4 inches of headroom. So we're talking at least 8 inches tall. Again, preferable. If you have a container that's 7 inches, make it work, right? It'll work. Fine. All examples of great different kinds of containers. So, the clamshell containers that produce comes in, I've seen, like heads of butter lettuce or strawberries. Those kind of containers work really well. I used a juice container. My son was going through a cranberry juice phase at the time, and so I had a bunch of cranberry juice containers. Those work great. You can see in the photo in the bottom there, Chris actually used nursery trays. That's fine too. As long as you have the tops that go on them, it works. So whatever, go with what you got. Again, 4 inches of headroom, that's the easiest way to do it. If they don't, it's fine. It's fine. We'll make it work. And then, you just remove the cover by the time they get that tall anyway, so it's fine. Again, just more examples here. Rectangular or square containers will save on space, right? You can pack them in a little bit tighter when they've got corners. Smaller containers are going to dry out faster. So if you're using a smaller container, make sure you're checking them pretty regularly to make sure that they're staying wet enough. Often our natural precipitation is enough to keep them wet, but sometimes last year we had some dry spells. So I was checking my containers and watering them as I needed to. We'll get more into that later. You want to avoid using containers that held chemicals because you never know when you're going to have residues on there that are going to affect your plants. So again, maybe try and stay away from those. If you're using 2-liter soda bottles, great option. They can be a little bit top heavy sometimes, but you'll want to make sure that you fill your soil up past that indentation at the bottom. So where it kind of tapers down there, you'll want to make sure you put your soil over that. Otherwise, your seeds can get kind of tucked under that taper part, and that's not going to work. So you'll want to make sure you put probably a little bit more soil than you normally would in those. Watch out for those compostable containers. I know that's really trendy and it's probably better for the environment than plastic stuff. But again, compostable means they break down. So if you're putting them outside, they're probably going to break down. So they're, great if you're going to compost them. Fantastic. Don't use them for winter sowing. And again, clamshells that hold salad greens can work well too. All right, let's talk about potting soil here. There's all different kinds of potting soil. If you have been to a nursery and checked out those bags of soil, you know they've got all different kinds, and they've got stuff that comes from the ocean and stuff that comes from the forest and stuff that comes from here and there and everywhere. And it's got this technological miracle in it or whatever. You want light, fluffy, well-draining soil. You can use a soilless mix, that's fine. Pasteurized potting soil is fine. And use the highest quality you can afford. The, you know, lower grade store brands can sometimes have other things in them. I'm working with a homeowner right now who used a store brand of soil, put it in her garden, and that area is now completely sterile and will grow nothing. And we have no idea why. So use the highest quality soil you can. So you want to avoid seed starting mixes because they don't have enough nutrients in them. Even though technically we are starting seeds, the soil is going to have to sustain these seeds for a little while. So you want to make sure that there is some nutrients in them. Garden soil is too heavy, and it can have weed seeds and disease in there. So you want to stay away from garden soil. Same thing with topsoil. Those water crystals, they're great for house plants, not great for this. They're going to hold too much water in there and cause your seeds to rot. A homemade compost, again, great, but I know everywhere I put my homemade compost, I end up with tomato plants. If you're not trying to grow tomato plants, this is probably not a great thing. And you never know what you're bringing in with that. So, fungal things and whatever. So, great for mulching your garden with and for, putting in your garden. Don't use it for seed starting. And then succulent mixes, cactus potting soil, too porous, it's not going to hold enough water. So we're really trying to do that balancing act of we don't want to hold too much water, but we still got to hold some. So again, potting soil, just regular old potting soil is perfect. And again, remember, you can sow more than just flowers. So trees, acorns, I know people have done this with acorns to grow their own oak trees, which is super cool. Um, but we've already mentioned some vegetables, annuals, herbs, perennials, trees and shrubs, right? You can anything. This is how nature does it, right? This is how nature does it. So that's what we're doing. We're just trying to mimic nature as best we can. Your seed packet is going to have so much information on there. It does more than just hold your seeds. So phrases to look for on your seed packet to indicate that maybe these would be good for winter sowing. Things it'll say, it might just say on it, stratification needed. Hardy seeds, early winter, can withstand frost. Sow in early spring. Plant outdoors in the fall. That's another great one, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. I thought this one was kind of cool. Name showing natural environments like prairie, mountain, swamp, or plains, right? Maybe stay away from desert, but things that show prairie, right? That's here. So name showing temperate region origins like alpine, canadensis. How many plants do we know have canadensis in their name? Siberian, polar, oriental. All of these indicate that they come from more temperate regions, and will probably do well winter sown. And again, pulling out things from your seed packets. That middle one there is directly from a Prairie Moon seed packet. Again, I'm not advocating for Prairie Moon. I just love the information that they put on their seed packets. It's very clear, very easy to understand and follow. But you can see that germination code that's on there, C120. The C means it needs stratification. 120 tells you how many days. So that's one that needs 120 days of cold, moist stratification. So if you were going to do this in your fridge, it would have to live in your fridge for 4 months. Nothing survives in my fridge for 4 months without getting thrown out by somebody who gets overzealous and trying to clean out the produce drawer. So ask me how I know. So these are going to give you, again, those indications. So Sow seeds outdoors in late fall or early winter for a spring germination. That right there tells you this is good for winter sowing. Now, seed sources, you want to look at reputable seed companies. Um, Buying off of random websites, even random websites that share the name of a river, um, you never quite know what you're going to get necessarily. Um, so make sure where you're buying from is a reputable seed company, a company that's been around for a while. You know, you can always Google search the name and see what the reviews are of that site. Um, but again, make sure you're going for reputable seed companies because the last thing you want to get is some random pack of seeds in the mail that who knows what they are. The number of calls I get it, I should say I get at least one call every year from somebody. I ordered X, but these seeds don't look like X. What did I get? And a lot of times it's kind of hard to tell. So um, you can also, retail garden centers, big box and dollar stores. The caveat there, if you are looking to do native seeds, do not buy native seeds from a big box store or something labeled wildflower mix. If you are trying to get native seeds, if you look at the wildflower mix and see what's actually included in there, I have yet to find one that didn't come from, again, one of those reputable native specific companies that was actually all native plants. And almost to a T, they're guaranteed to have at least one invasive species in them. So don't buy wildflower mix without looking at what's actually in it and checking out those species. But if you're buying tomatoes and peppers, those big box stores are fine. You can save your own seeds in the fall. Illinois Extension's got a great set of webinars, podcasts, articles. We've got all kinds of stuff on seed saving. And the Field Museum even has a field guide to saving seeds as well. That's pretty cool. So, and then you can also go to seed swaps in winter or early spring. A lot of those, yep, check out your local friends seed swap. Extensions having seed swaps all over the place. I believe I think Extension has a whole compiled list of all the seed swaps in the area, and they all seem to be coming up within the next couple of weeks. So find one near you. Morton Arboretum's got one, Seed Savers Exchange, right? Everybody's got seed swaps. You can collect again, you can save your own seeds, but only collect from places where you have explicit permission from the landowner, forest preserve. It is illegal to remove things from forest preserves. So a lot of times they're trying to save their own seeds anyway. So, please don't go out to your local forest preserve and start grabbing handfuls of seed out of there. That is illegal and generally comes with a pretty substantial fine if you get caught. So don't do that. No, with hybrid plants, you may not get what you expect. So, when you get these hybrid tomatoes or cucumbers, for one, if it's already a hybrid, those seeds might just be sterile. A lot of hybrid seeds just come out sterile naturally. If you grow multiple varieties of the same thing, chances are they've crossed, especially things like cucurbits. Ask anybody who has had random cucurbits grow in their garden. I play a fun game every year with my compost of what cucurbit is this going to be. One year I got some pretty cool butternut squash. One year I got a really pretty pumpkin that was sort of mint green. I don't know what that crossed with. That was pretty cool. One year I got a melon that kind of looked like a cantaloupe that was about the size of a softball. It was terrible. Those things cross and interbreed. Like if you grow zucchini and yellow crookneck or pumpkins, there's a chance you'll end up with some kind of inedible frankensquash next year if you try to save the seeds on it. Cantaloupe and honeydew can cross, right? They can cross pollinate with it if they're within a distance of about a half mile. So if you want to try and keep them true, you have to hand pollinate them and then bag the flowers with some kind of like mesh bag or something to keep something else from pollinating it, because our pollinators do a really great job, and sometimes they pollinate things in a way we don't want them to. So yeah, those cucurbits get really crazy. But know that even if things do cross pollinate, the fruit will be fine. It's the seeds that are affected. I had somebody tell me one time that they grew bell peppers next to habanero peppers, and the bell peppers came out kind of spicy. I think that was maybe some cross contamination and not cross pollination. Because, like I said, it's the seeds that are affected for the future generations. It's not the fruit itself. So just know that um, there are lists online of what can hybridize. And so, anyway, just something to keep in mind if you're going to be saving your own seeds. All right, so other tools, you're going to use a hole punch for punching holes on the sides of the containers, and use twist tie then to secure them. We'll go into that in a little bit. So those are some tools that you'll need. Some scissors or box cutters to cut your containers. Some kind of sharp object for punching drainage holes. Weatherproof marker or paint pen, something to mark the outside of each container. And then this is kind of a messy process, so having some kind of table covering, a cutting board, rulers, those are all optional types of equipment. So let's talk about how we do this. So first step is preparing our containers. You're going to take your container, you're going to rinse it, remove your caps, and then remove any labels or stickers. So if you're going to use your containers over and over, you actually don't have to worry about rinsing them out subsequently. As long as you get all the leftover milk and whatever out the first time, you're good to go. Stickers can block sunlight from reaching the seeds. So you can, if it's like a paper label, you can run hot water over it. I've put wet paper towels over the top of it too, kind of let that soak in, and then they should just scrape right off. Then you're going to cut them in half almost. We want to make sure we leave a hinge on the side there. So you're going to draw a circle around the container. Somebody taught me this trick and I really like it. I used a rubber band. And so I put a rubber band around the container, adjusted it to right where I wanted, and then traced around the rubber band. And then you leave about a 2-inch gap near the handle, and that's going to be your hinge. I like doing it near the handle because, again, it just makes it easier to hold that way. There's another method that you can do that I learned about recently, and I didn't have any pictures to include here, but another extension educator told me she likes to make a window in hers. And so she cuts a flap in the front of the container, leaving the top attached so she can just kind of lift up to water or to get inside there. And then that way you don't have to worry about sealing it or doing anything else with it. Just another way to do it. You might still have to cut it open, which would wreck your container then to get the seedlings out. But she says they're easier to transport because they don't have that big cut all the way around the side. So it's kind of dealer's choice there, whatever works for you. Next thing is you're going to cut some drainage holes. Now be safe. The last thing we want is for you to put a screwdriver into your thigh. So have a cutting mat or some thick pieces of paper, something underneath, and you're going to make holes about pencil width. That's why I like using a screwdriver for this, is because it's about the right size, especially if you use like one of the bigger screwdrivers. And you're going to want to punch these from the inside out. Reason being, you generally want to punch the holes in the direction you want stuff to go. If you punch from the outside in, that little flap that's left there can end up blocking the hole and blocking your drainage. So just little pro tip there. So you're going to cut these holes in the bottom. And again, it's for drainage. We want to make sure that any excess water has a place to go and your seeds aren't going to be sitting in a bunch of soup. Then you're going to cut some ventilation holes, mainly if you're using flat topped containers like this one here. Milk jugs, they've got that spout already, so you might put a couple around the top, kind of around where the spout is, but they may not need that either. But if you're using a container like this one that's got a flat top on it, doesn't have any weight, and these are ventilation and a place for the water to go in. So, snow sits on top. As that snow melts, that's what's going to water your plants. So in this case, you're going to punch from the outside in because we want the water to flow in. And yeah. So, um, and ventilation really is key to preventing excess heat from building up in your little greenhouse too, because we don't want to bake our poor little seeds to death. If you're using a beverage container, you'll put a few near the opening. If you're using a flat top container like this, just kind of space them out. Now, labeling, we want to make sure we label these really well. Sharpies are great, but as we know, permanent markers are not always, especially if they're sitting out in the sun. I can't tell you how many times I have labeled things with permanent marker, set them out in the sun, and then I come out a month later and everything's gone. So I experimented a little bit with mine. I used a label maker. We happen to have one laying around the house. I used a label maker and then put packing tape over the top of it. That worked really well. Did not sun bleach at all. I was very impressed with that. Nail polish will also work. Paint pens are another good choice for that. Wax pencils will work. So basically anything that's not going to wear away. I mean, we're gardeners. We know we've labeled our plants before and then been disappointed when our labels wear off. So another option you can do, I tried, was I stuck the seed packet actually inside my container. Did not work so well. My seed packet kind of disintegrated a bit. And yeah, but you can also put your labels inside the container too, and that can help protect them too. But yeah, it's a huge bummer come spring to see a bunch of containers brimming with seedlings and not know what they are. You know, I can't tell you how many times I have looked at something and gone, oh, I'm going to remember that. Sure. And then set it outside and 2 months later went, what was that again? So yeah, don't learn from my mistakes. Label everything. You will be happy you did. All right, next up is the soil. So this step can get a little messy. So you want to do it someplace that can be cleaned up easily. First thing you want to do is you want to moisten your soil with warm water and let it drain. I sometimes will actually do this first. Before I start anything else, I will take my bucket or my tub or whatever I'm mixing with, put my soil in there, add the water, stir it up really good, and let it sit and let it really absorb that water while I'm prepping the containers. Just gives it a little more time to get, fully incorporated there. You want a moisture level like a damp sponge. So you pick up a handful, you don't really want it dripping, but wet enough all the way through. Then you're going to add about 3 to 4 inches of soil to the bottom of your container. You want to make sure you've got at least a ½ inch to an inch below your cutting line. So when you're measuring to cut your containers, make sure you've got, 3 to 4 inches for your soil, and then give it another inch and a half so that, you've got some headroom there. Because what you don't want to happen is water to go into the container and wash your seeds out. So where you've got that cut line, you want to make sure, again, you've got a little bit of a lip there. Now we're going to add our seeds. So you're going to read your seed packet again for sowing depth. So if you're like me, get the seed packet out of the garbage where you've put it so that you can read it again, right? Just like the mac and cheese box. So read your seed packet. It will tell you the sowing depth. Rule of thumb is twice the seed's diameter is how deep you want it to go. Some seeds require light to germinate. If so, you'll just scatter them on the surface. You want to sow a few more seeds than you think you'll need because you got to figure you're going to have some that are going to be duds. So put a little bit more in there than what you think. And then you want to press them in to ensure good seed to soil contact. Or alternatively, you can take fresh soil and sprinkle it over the top. I use soil that I haven't moistened yet and just kind of sprinkle that over the top and then give it a little spritz with a spray bottle. You don't want to pour water on there because that's gonna some of the seeds will float and they'll, get moved around. So you want to do it gentle. Make sure you get them, again, their seeds. Is it critical that you get them exactly twice the seed's diameter in there? No, of course not. But you also don't want them to go all floating off towards the sides. Um, yeah, so again, twice as deep as they are wide. Foxgloves, those are teeny, teeny, tiny ones. If anybody's ever planted foxgloves before, those you just kind of sprinkle and pat into the surface. Um, you get to peas and corn, right? Those are 1/4 inch across, so those are going to go a 1/2 inch down. Um, but cone flowers, 1/4 inch, again, it can be hard to get exact. Just aim for approximate. It's fine. And as I mentioned, you can moisten the soil after you planted the seeds, but you don't want to stream the water over the top. Get a spray bottle and just kind of mist over the top. That'll be enough water without moving your seeds around too much. Now we're going to secure our sides. If you can do the hole punch twist tie method, in which case you're going to punch a couple of holes along the side with your hole punch, and then use your twist ties to hold them in place. Super secure. You don't have to worry about it coming off. I didn't have a hole punch or twist ties, so I used packing tape on mine, and they actually worked pretty well. I did keep an eye on them though to make sure that the packing tape didn't get too wet or too loose on there. So, just keep an eye on that. But it's also not a reusable method. So once you get to the point later on where we're taking the tops off, it's not going to be as sticky, but it's something to do. This is also though where the hinge method comes in handy, because if you use that hinge method where you cut that window in the front, you don't even have to worry about it because that side is just naturally going to fall down in front of it and it doesn't matter. So it's when you're cutting it in half, you got to worry about that top flying off. If you have that hinge, it's not a big deal. So again, however you want to do it. And then we're going to place our containers outside. We want them to get a 1/2 day of sun. We want it to be safe from wind, pets, and people, and allows rain and snow to get in. So, decks, uncovered porches, against a fence, flower bed, put them right where they're going to go, right? Just stick your container right where they're going to go. And that's probably fine too. The deal is we just want them to be able to get snow and moisture in there along with sun. You don't want to put them underneath the eaves of your house. It's a little too protected. So they're not going to get enough rain, snow, or sun. Your seedlings will get killed off. You also want to make sure you're protecting them from critters. I've heard some people use chicken wire or hardware cloth to do that. Just preventing chipmunks from getting inside and eating all your seed. Keeping a journal, again, this is just like labeling your containers. It saves you from trying to remember what you did. Sometimes writing down when you started things helps you for next year. Like, oh man, those didn't work so good. Maybe I should have started them sooner. So, just keep those kind of details in there. And then we're just going to let them go, right? And this is the part where you get to be lazy. Know that check on your containers periodically. You'll want to make sure that you're seeing some kind of condensation in the top there. So you can see on that container, that means that container is perfectly hydrated, right? If we were looking at that, it's a warm day and there's no condensation on there, too dry. And we'll want to make sure we add some water to it then. But you can see I put those on the photo on the left there. Those are my jugs that I did on my porch. They just kind of sat there. When I'd go to let the dog out, I would take a look and see, yep, there's condensation on them. We're good. They need both snow and ice, so don't worry about it. And then pretty soon, as they're going to freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw, and the weather's going to start to warm up a little bit, and we're going to have some seedlings. It's going to happen sooner than you think, generally. You're going to start to see little bits of green in there. Anytime it starts to get a little bit sunny, warm, and windy, we want to make sure we're checking that moisture to make sure they're not drying out. And then as the days warm up, you're going to want to make sure you're checking it a little more frequently. You're going to gradually allow more air to circulate them. So when the daytime temperatures are over 40 degrees, you check them for moisture. And then when the temperature is getting into like the 50s and 60s, especially when it's sunny, pop that top off, right? Let them get some fresh air, let them get some sun, right? This is kind of the hardening off process, essentially. Um, but close them up again at night. We want to make sure that greenhouse keeps that warmth in there. The temperatures inside your container could be up to 20 degrees warmer than outside. And then you'll remove the lid completely when the seedlings start to outgrow their container. And then it's time to transplant. Exciting. And they're ready to go when the ground thaws, and they have generally two sets of leaves. Remember those first leaves that come out when they grow, those are the cotyledons or the seed leaves. They're not actually real leaves. They're just kind of the two halves of the seed. The next set of leaves that come out, those are the first set of true leaves. So two sets of true leaves are 2 inches tall. And then whenever conditions are right and you have time, right? As I mentioned with my Kankakee mallow, I think they sat in my containers till June because I was busy and I was afraid I was going to forget about them if I put them in the ground too soon. Choose the spot where you're going to transplant your seedlings first. Prepare the soil, get it all ready before removing things from your containers, right? Last thing you want to do is pull them out and then go, oh, wait, where was I going to put these again? There's a couple of methods on how to transplant here. The first one is the hunko seedlings method. I just like saying hunko seedlings. You can take a spoon from your kitchen or a butter knife and cut them like brownies, right? Just make some little slices in through the seedlings, scoop them out with the spoon. Here is your little hunk of seedlings, put them in the ground. Thin them out as you need to. That works best with thickly sown carpet-like seedlings, lettuces, stuff like that. And you're just going to put that whole piece right in the ground, so disturbing the roots as little as possible. For more thinly sown plants, individual plants, like my two Kankakee mallow, you'll want to tease them out separately and plant by themselves, right? This one, again, I just used a spoon out of my kitchen. Promise it, they're clean. I clean them afterwards. But I take my spoon and I just sort of scoop, try to get as much of that soil in there, disturb the roots as little as possible, and then put them right in the ground. Your plants are going to start out small, especially natives. With natives, we always say they have that sleep, creep, leap cycle. They're going to be real small the first year. My Kankakee mallow, even though I babied the heck out of it all spring long, I got them in the ground, I took care of them. They never got more than about 2 or 3 inches tall. This year, I'm hoping maybe 6 inches. And by the third year, that's when they should get their full height. So don't forget about them once you put them in the ground. Again, that's why I waited so long with my poor little Kankakee mallows, is because I was afraid I was going to forget about them. I set reminders on my phone. I get, set a reminder to go off every 3 days to check your plants. We got to do what we got to do. Now, some troubleshooting. If the seeds are sprouting really early, it could just mean that it's a warm spring and they're going to germinate faster. That's normal. If only some of the seeds are sprouting, again, also normal. Some seeds just take longer to grow than others, even seeds of the same species. It just happens. If there's no condensation, could mean you have too many ventilation holes, or the holes that you have are too large. You can put a clear plastic bag, like a gallon zip top bag. You can put that over the top to help hold some of that moisture in. Or it could also mean that they just need to be watered. The soil is soupy or muddy, or there's standing water in the container. That means your drain holes aren't working. So in that case, you'll want to, maybe stick a pencil in them to try and open them up a little bit. Or you can also stand them up on like 2 sticks or a couple of bricks, something to get those drain holes out of contact, because sometimes they'll seal in against the ground and then they won't drain as well. So getting them up off the ground a little bit can help them drain better. There's green stuff growing on the surface. That's algae. Generally means your soil's too wet, there isn't enough sun, or it's too humid inside. Give the containers a little more sun. little less water. Um, you can scrape the algae layer off the surface or don't. And then if the container is just really, really light, it means that the soil's dried up and you want to make sure you water it thoroughly, ASAP. All right, let's take a look at some pictures here. Look at all these beautiful winter sown things, everything from tomatoes to sunflowers, coneflowers, right? Lots of great things here. Yeah, and as I mentioned, that Western lupin is Lupinus polyphyllus. That's the one that's native to the West Coast and is kind of problematic, i.e. invasive. Um, Native lupins are Lupinus perennis or sundial lupins, as they're called. So they're both often called wild lupins. So just make sure you know which one you're getting. All right, zinnias, prairie smoke's one of my favorite. I love me some prairie smoke. That just looks so cool. The little mass of it on the ground is great. Bottle gentian's another really fun one. Bumblebees love bottle gentian. They're the only ones who can pry those petals apart, even though it just looks like a bud. That's what the whole flower looks like. And bumblebees are the only ones that can pry those petals apart and go in to get the pollen and nectar out of there. And sometimes it takes them so much work to get in there that they just fall asleep with their little bee butts hanging out the backside. And then columbine, I love columbine. Columbine is one of my favorite little rascals. It will scatter itself all over your yard. It will turn up in places you never thought it would show up in. And it will go there and it will bloom and it will go away and it plays very nicely with everything. So we just kind of let it. And then, of course, the ubiquitous pansies, which did you know pansies are edible? They can go in your salads. I don't have a problem. You have a problem. Okay. So then we have some resources here. Again, I mentioned earlier that Winter Sown website, Trudy Davidoff was the one who kind of came up with this whole method. Um, I, I don't suggest joining the Facebook group. They are very prescriptive, and if you don't do it their way, they'll yell at you. It's not that big a deal, right? It'll work. It's fine. And at Extension, we have lots of information about winter sowing. So if, you know, 3 days from now you go, wait a minute, what did she say? You can go check out our website and find all the information that you need. And with that, that is me. And I've included the links here to your local Cook Extension offices. I am out of the DuPage County office. My office is in Naperville. You're welcome to reach out to me as well, or your local Cook County Master Gardener. So with that, if we have any questions.
Right. No, thank you so much, Jamie. This was awesome. I saw some hands clapping. I saw some positive comments in the chat. So just kudos to you on a really thorough and very entertaining presentation. We
Thank you.
have just a couple of comments in the chat so far. And I'll just start with the first one that we received from Tamsin. They ask, what's a good source to find information about scavenged or collected seeds? And in this case, they know what the seed is. They just don't have the seed packet to reference.
Yeah, so I mentioned, again, this is not me advocating for or against Prairie Moon Nursery, but their website, especially if they're natives, they have great references, resources on their website that all you have to do is look up the plant on their site. They'll give you all the information about how to grow it there, whether it comes from them or not. So, you know, it'll have all the information again, which is also handy if you lose your seed packet. So
Perfect. And then Dave asks, is there a preferred method for watering when that's needed, spritz or more?
yeah, so generally, and I should have mentioned this, what I do is I take the container and I turn the container kind of at an angle and then direct the water down the side of the container. Again, we don't want to splash it right in the top because that'll send your seeds all flying. So if you turn the container kind of on an angle, you can drip the water down the side, really get the soil. Another option is because we have those holes in the bottom, you can stand them in a tray of water. So use something like a 9 by 13 pan or something like that, fill it with water, set your containers in there, let them soak it up from the bottom. That's another method of watering as well. Um, Spritzing it with a sprayer is fine, but your hand might get tired.
Good
So,
point.
yeah. So, I generally prefer the other two methods.
Great. And then, so you shared a few containers that folks could consider for seed starting. Dominique is asking if strawberry containers would work for
Perfect.
winter sowing.
Yep,
Perfect.
they're perfect. Any of those kind of produce containers, right? They've got the holes in them naturally for ventilation for like the strawberries. So, yep, yep, those are all good. Something you might do with those if you're concerned that the holes on the bottom are too big, you might put a coffee filter over the top of it that'll hold your soil in while still letting some water get out. Um, that may or may not work. Or you may do that in the beginning, and if it's holding too much water, just kind of use a pencil to poke holes in that coffee filter from the bottom. That'll work.
Great. Really helpful. And then to Janice's question, she says, my bottle gentian is white, not blue. I can't find any info about this plant. Any advice?
Just it's natural variation in the plant. It's the same thing, violets come in a wide range of colors, even though they're all wild violets. It's just genetic anomalies on them.
Great. And then our last question here, again, I'll mention the positive comments keep rolling in, so kudos. So Allison asks, in the freezing weather, how do you know if it's needed, uh, if it is in need of water or if that is more after freezing temps?
So yeah, you probably won't have as much condensation, especially if it gets real cold. That's okay. The plants aren't going to be doing a whole lot. Hopefully, before it got that cold, they were wet. But again, as it warms up, that's when you're going to keep an eye out for that condensation. So when it's really frozen, you don't really need to worry about it too much. But as it starts to warm up, you want to keep an eye on it.
Really helpful. Thank you, Jamie. And with that, I think we are at the end of our questions, so I'll just pass it back to Judy to wrap us up.
Sure. Okay, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I hope everybody is inspired and confident and enthusiastic and ready to go winter. So, I would say give it a shot. And like Jamie's encouraged us, this whole program, don't worry about it. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Just try it out and see how it goes. I think I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years now, and I keep learning as I go. One tip I can share with you that I wouldn't advise is I used to take a milk jug and put half kale and then half basil. And that I would advise just keep your jugs one species because the plants grow at a different pace. Some germinate sooner. You're messing with the soil to get those out. So it was always like, oh, I don't need that much kale, so I'll just put some basil over here. And I felt that combining two different types of plants was never as successful as I wanted it to be. So just try to keep your containers single species. That's my advice. Um,
I did a
have you done that?
wildflower mix, and I
Okay.
had the same issue. It was just this random packet of wildflower and truly native wildflower seeds that I had, and didn't know where I was going to put them. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to throw them in here and see how it goes. And they did great. I had this huge carpet of seeds, and there were like five different species, and like I don't know where I'm going to put all of these
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
I
I
have
did
a
the hunk of seedlings method, and they're way too close, and yeah,
Yeah.
it was not good.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
source for labeling.
Oh,
I went to Menards and I found magic markers that truly are sun resistant, and they really do work.
Oh,
Used
good.
it in the Cheney Mansion all summer long, and they never got light.
okay. Good
Menards.
hot tip.
Okay.
Good hot tip.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, thank you so much. This was really fun, and we are sitting here
Thank you.
hibernating in the cold, but now we're all dreaming of what we're going to start winter sowing. So
Gives
that's
you a little something to
exactly
do.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what we needed at this time of year. So stay warm, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And please sign up for our February lecture and join us on Sunday at our seed swap. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.